Florence glowed beneath the autumn moon, its ancient stones holding secrets older than time. High above the city, in a penthouse that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, Dante Moretti pushed open the heavy door. His designer suit hung loosely on his shoulders, his silk shirt unbuttoned at the collar. A smudge of crimson lipstick marked his neck evidence of another meaningless encounter in an endless string of forgotten faces. He didn't bother turning on the lights. The city's glow was enough, but as his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he saw her. Giulia Ricci sat perched on the leather sofa. Her elegant dress perfectly pressed, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes burned with a mixture of hurt and fury that he'd seen countless times before. The same old dance, where were you, Dante? Her voice trembled despite her attempt at control. Let me guess, another business dinner that lasted until 3 in the morning. Dante walked past her without answering, heading straight for the crystal decanter on the mahogany bar. The whiskey poured smooth and golden, catching the light like liquid amber. He took his time, letting the silence stretch between them like a taut wire ready to snap. You don't even have the decency to lie anymore, Giulia continued, standing now. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached him. I give you everything, Dante. My time, my love, my patience. What do I have to do to make you see me? He finally turned to face her, his gray eyes cold as winter frost. Giulia. Her name left his lips like a sigh of exhaustion. You knew what this was from the beginning. I never promised you roses and poetry. I never promised you forever, but I love you. The words burst from her like a dam breaking. Doesn't that mean anything to you? The truth in silence for a moment. Something flickered across Dante's face, not quite guilt, but perhaps its distant cousin. He set down his glass and moved toward her with the practiced grace of a predator. His fingers brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Love is a pretty word people use to make themselves feel better about their choices, he said softly, his thumb tracing her jawline. What we have works because we both get something from it. Don't complicate it with fairy tales. Giulia wanted to argue, wanted to rage against his coldness, but Dante knew exactly how to end these conversations. His lips found hers, and despite everything, despite the lipstick stain on his collar and the smell of another woman's perfume, she melted into him. He carried her to the bedroom, and for a few hours, she could pretend that his passion meant something more than physical release. When morning came, Dante was already gone. The empire builder, the Moretti Group, headquarters rose from Florence's business district like a monument to ambition. Glass and steel twisted into an architectural marvel that screamed power and wealth. Inside, employees moved with the nervous energy of people who knew their boss tolerated nothing less than perfection. Dante strode through the lobby, his presence causing conversations to halt mid-sentence. He didn't acknowledge the greetings thrown his way. Giuseppe, his assistant for the past decade, fell into step beside him, tablet in hand. The interviews for the secretary position are scheduled for this morning, sir. We have 12 candidates, all highly qualified. Let's get this over with, Dante muttered. Already bored by the prospect, the parade of predictability, one by one they came. Beautiful women in expensive suits, their resumes impressive, their smiles practiced. They leaned forward just enough to be noticed, laughed at his dry comments as if they were comedy gold, and made it abundantly clear they were interested in more than just employment. Dante had been through this routine. So many times it had become a joke. He could predict every move, every flirtatious glance, every carefully calculated gesture. By the 8th candidate, he was ready to cancel the rest and promote someone from within. Then Sofia Bianchi walked through the door. The woman who changed everything. She wasn't what he expected. Where the others wore designer labels, she wore a simple navy dress that had probably come from a department store. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and she carried a worn leather portfolio that had seen better days. But it was her eyes that caught him, deep brown, steady, unimpressed by the expensive office or the powerful man behind the desk. Your name? He asked, leaning back in his chair with the casual arrogance of someone used to intimidating people. "Sir," her voice was calm, professional. With none of the breathy quality the other candidates had employed, Dante studied her. Searching for the usual signs, the quick glance at his left hand to check for a wedding ring, the subtle adjustment of posture to appear more attractive, the forced casualness that screamed desperation, he found none of it. Sofia simply stood there, waiting, her expression polite but distant. "Your experience?" he continued, intrigued despite himself. 5 years as an administrative assistant at Romano Industries, 3 years before that at a legal firm. My references are in the portfolio, along with examples of my organizational systems and efficiency reports. She handed him the portfolio without fanfare. As he flipped through it, he noticed the meticulous attention to detail, the innovative solutions to common office problems, the glowing recommendations from former supervisors. On paper, she was qualified, but it was something else that made his decision. There was a stillness about her, quiet strength that reminded him of ancient marbles, unshakable, real. In a world where everyone wanted something from him, where every interaction was a transaction, Sofia looked at him as if he were simply another person. Not a prize to be won, not a ladder to be climbed. Just a potential employer. The unexpected choice the other board members sat around the conference table, having sat in on the final interviews. Dante could feel their eyes on him as he closed the portfolio. His next words would surprise them all, himself included. "You're hired." The room fell silent. Giuseppe's tablet nearly slipped from his hands. 2 of the directors exchanged confused glances. Sofia herself showed only the slightest widening of her eyes before composing herself. "Thank you, sir. When would you like me to start?" "Monday. Giuseppe will handle the paperwork." As she left the room with a slight nod, Dante caught himself watching the door long after it closed. Something had shifted, though he couldn't name what. For the first time in years, he'd made a decision that wasn't calculated, wasn't strategic, wasn't about maintaining his carefully constructed world. He'd followed an instinct he didn't understand, and that fact unsettled him more than he cared to admit. The first crack that evening, back in his penthouse, Dante stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Florence. Julia was at some charity function, he'd forgotten which one. The whiskey in his hand had gone warm, untouched. He kept seeing those steady brown eyes, that quiet dignity. Sofia Bianchi had walked into his office and somehow, without trying, without even seeming to care, she'd left a mark on him. It was like finding a crack in armor he'd spent decades forging. Dante Moretti had built his empire on reading people, unknowing their weaknesses and desires before they did. But as he stared out at the glittering city, he realized he couldn't read Sofia at all. She was a mystery, an anomaly in his perfectly ordered world, and mysteries, he knew, were dangerous things, especially for a man who'd spent his entire life believing. He was above the messy complications of genuine human connection. The ice around his heart had never been threatened before. He didn't know yet that the quiet woman with the worn portfolio was about to shatter it completely. The game had begun. Though neither of them knew they were playing, Monday arrived with the crisp promise of change. Sofia Bianchi stepped into the Moretti Group headquarters wearing another simple dress. Her hair neatly arranged, her demeanor calm and professional. Giuseppe showed her to her desk just outside. Dante's office, a strategic position where she would manage his schedule, filter his calls, and essentially become the gatekeeper to one of Florence's most powerful men. Within days, it became clear that Dante had made an exceptional choice. Sofia transformed his chaotic calendar into a model of efficiency. She anticipated problems before they arose, handled difficult clients with diplomatic grace, and maintained an organizational system that even Giuseppe admired. The office ran smoother than it had in years, but what frustrated Dante most was her unwavering professionalism. The wall between them every morning. Sofia arrived exactly 15 minutes early. She would have his espresso ready perfectly prepared. After just 2 days of observing his preferences, a concise summary of the day's priorities. When he spoke to her, she met his eyes without flinching. But there was no lingering in her gaze, no invitation in her smile. The other women in the office watched this dynamic with barely concealed fascination. They'd all seen the parade of secretaries. Before Sofia, most lasting only months before either falling into Dante's bed or quitting in frustration at his cold rejections. But Sofia seemed immune to his legendary charm. "Good morning, Signor Moretti," she would say. Each day, her voice pleasant but impersonal. "Your first meeting is at 9 with the development team." He tested her boundaries in subtle ways. Compliments about her efficiency that she accepted with simple thanks. Questions about her personal life that she deflected with polite but firm responses. Once he'd leaned close while reviewing a document on her desk, close enough that any other woman would have reacted a caught breath, a nervous laugh, a meaningful glance. Sofia simply waited for him to move. Her expression unchanged, the growing fascination weeks turned into a month. And Dante found himself thinking about his secretary far more than was professional or comfortable. He noticed small things, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when concentrating, the slight furrow in her brow when solving a complex problem, the genuine warmth in her voice when she spoke to Giuseppe or the junior staff. With him, however, she maintained that invisible wall, respectful, efficient, and utterly unreachable. "She's different," Giuseppe observed one afternoon as they reviewed quarterly reports. "The others always wanted something from you. She just wants to do her job well." Dante grunted noncommittally, but the old man was right. Sofia treated him the way she might treat any employer, with professional courtesy and nothing more. No scheming, no seduction, no attempts to leverage her position into something more. It was maddening and intriguing, and something else he refused to name. The business trip in late October. Dante had to travel to Rome for a series of meetings with government officials and potential investors. The trip would last for days, and he decided to leave Sofia in charge of finalizing several critical contracts and managing the Florence office in his absence. "I'm trusting you with this," he told her the day before his departure, searching her face for some reaction to the responsibility he was placing on her shoulders. "I won't let you down, sir," she replied simply, and she didn't. While Dante navigated the political minefields of Roman business, Sofia handled everything in Florence with remarkable competence. She even caught an error in one of the contracts that would have cost the company millions, something the legal team had missed entirely. The predator emerges, but Dante's absence created an opportunity for someone else. Lorenzo Russo had been with the Moretti Group for 8 years, rising to senior manager through a combination of genuine skill and calculated ruthlessness. He was handsome in a slick, overly groomed way, and he had a reputation that most people whispered about but no one officially acknowledged. Lorenzo had noticed Sofia from her first day. He'd watched Dante's unusual interest in the new secretary, with knowing amusement, recognizing the familiar pattern, even if this particular woman wasn't playing the usual game. In Lorenzo's experience, every woman had her price, her weakness. It was just a matter of finding the right pressure point. With Dante safely in Rome, Lorenzo made his move. The late night, it was Thursday evening, nearly 9 o'clock. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving only the night cleaning crew and Sofia, who was determined to finish reviewing the final contract before leaving. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the soft click of her keyboard and the distant hum of the building's heating system. She didn't hear Lorenzo approach until he was already behind her. "Working late again, Sofia?" His voice was smooth, practiced. Such dedication. I admire that in a woman. Sofia's spine stiffened, but she kept her eyes on the screen. "Just finishing up some work, Signor Russo. I'll be leaving soon. No need to rush on my account." He moved closer, and she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something sharper alcohol, perhaps. "You know, I've been meaning to talk to you about your future here at Moretti Group." "My future?" She saved her document and started to stand, but Lorenzo's hand landed on her shoulder, pressing her back down into the chair. The pressure wasn't quite forceful enough to be called violence, but the threat was clear. "The attack, everyone knows how things work around here," Lorenzo continued, his fingers trailing from her shoulder toward her neck. "Dante may seem untouchable, but he's just a man. And men like him, men like me, we appreciate women who understand the real rules of success. Play nice with the right people, and doors open. Resist, and well, Sofia twisted away from his touch, standing so quickly that her chair rolled backward. I'm not interested in whatever you're suggesting, Signor Russo. I'm here to do my job, nothing more. Oh, Sofia. Lorenzo laughed, but there was nothing warm in the sound. Do you really think your efficiency and your professional act make you special? You're just another woman trying to climb a ladder in a man's world? The only question is whether you're smart enough to take help when it's offered. I don't need that kind of help. Please step aside. She tried to move past him, but Lorenzo was faster. His hand shot out, gripping her arm with bruising force. Sofia's portfolio fell to the floor, papers scattering across the polished wood. Let me go. Her voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. I don't think you understand your position here, Lorenzo growled, pushing her backward until she hit the edge of her desk. You think you're better than the others? Think you're going to be different? Everyone has a role to play, Sofia. And yours, his other hand grabbed the collar of her blouse, and with one violent motion, he pulled. The fabric tore with a sound that seemed to echo in the empty office, buttons scattering like frightened birds. Sofia gasped, her hands coming, up to protect herself, to push him away. But Lorenzo was stronger, his weight pinning her against the desk. Stop, please, stop. Tears blurred her vision as she struggled, but he caught her wrists, his face too close, his breath hot against her cheek. Don't fight it, he whispered, his hand sliding down to her skirt. This is how the world works. The sooner you accept that, the storm arrives. The office door exploded open with such force that it slammed against the wall. Dante Moretti stood in the doorway, his suit disheveled from travel, his gray eyes blazing with a fury that turned the air arctic. Get your hands off her. Each word was a blade of ice, sharp enough to cut bone. Lorenzo froze, the color draining from his face as he realized who had caught him. He released Sofia immediately, stumbling backward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender that came far too late. Dante crossed the room in 3 long strides. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The leashed violence in his movements was more terrifying than any shout could have been. Signor Moretti's justice is, and she was silence. Dante's voice could have frozen hell itself. He looked at Sofia, taking in her torn blouse, her tears, the red marks on her wrists where Lorenzo had gripped her. Something dangerous moved behind his eyes, something primal and protective that he'd never felt before. He turned back to Lorenzo, and when he spoke, his words were measured, final. You're finished, not just here, everywhere. By tomorrow morning, every company in Italy will know exactly what kind of man you are. You'll never work in business again. Now get out of my sight before I forget that I'm a civilized man. Lorenzo opened his mouth to protest, to beg, to make excuses, but the look on Dante's face stopped him cold. He fled, and the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hallway was the most satisfying thing Dante had heard in years. The aftermath for a long moment. Neither of them moved. Sofia stood trembling, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to hold together the ruins of her blouse. Dante carefully removed his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders, his movements gentle in stark contrast to the rage still simmering beneath his surface. Come with me, he said softly. He led her to his private office, closing the door behind them. The space was dark, except for the city lights filtering through the windows. Dante poured water from the crystal decanter on his desk, handing her the glass with steady hands that betrayed none of the turmoil inside him. Signor Moretti, I'm so sorry. I should have don't. He cut her off, his voice rough. Don't you dare apologize. This wasn't your fault. Not any of it. Sofia sank into one of the leather chairs, and Dante found himself kneeling in front of her, a position he'd never taken before any human being. His hands hovered near hers, wanting to offer comfort, but uncertain if touch would be welcome after what Lorenzo had done. I should have been here, he said, and the words tasted like ash. I should have protected you. You couldn't have known. I should have known what kind of man Lorenzo was. I should have fired him years ago, but he was good at his job, and I didn't care enough about anything else to notice. Dante's jaw clenched. That changes now. I'm changing the entire culture of this company. This will never happen again. Sofia looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since they'd met, Her professional mask cracked. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to face. Dante stood, moving to the window, his hands in his pockets. "Take the rest of the week off," he said, instead of answering. "With full pay. I'll arrange for counseling if you want it. And I'll support you if you want to press charges against Lorenzo. I can work Sofia." He turned to face her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Please, let me do this for you." She nodded slowly, clutching his jacket around her shoulders. As she stood to leave, Dante spoke again, the words escaping before he could stop them. "You're not like the others. You never were." The next morning, Dante sat in his penthouse, a untouched espresso growing cold on the marble table before him. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sofia's face, the fears, the vulnerability she'd tried so hard to hide. The image burned through him like acid, eating away at the comfortable numbness he'd cultivated for so many years. He'd built an empire on ruthlessness, on seeing people as assets or obstacles, on keeping everyone at arm's length. But somewhere in the past months, Sofia Bianchi had slipped past his defenses without even trying. She hadn't seduced him, hadn't manipulated him, hadn't played any of the games he was used to. She'd simply been herself, honest, dignified, real. And now she was hurt because he hadn't protected her. His phone buzzed. Giuseppe's name appeared on the screen. "The paperwork is complete, sir. Lorenzo Russo's termination is finalized, and legal is preparing documentation for the restraining order. I've also taken the liberty of contacting 3 security firms to upgrade our building's protection protocols." "Good." Dante's voice was hollow. "What else?" "Signora Ricci has been calling. She wants to know when you're returning home." Should I tell her I'm busy? The lie felt different this time. Before, his relationship with Julia had been a convenience, a role they both played. Now it felt like a chain, a remnant of the man he'd been before Sofia walked into his life and forced him to see himself clearly. That man disgusted him. The discovery on Friday. 2 days after the incident, Giuseppe knocked on Dante's office door with unusual hesitancy. "Sir, there's something you need to know about Signorina Bianchi." Dante looked up sharply. "Is she all right?" "Physically, yes. But I've been reviewing her personnel file, and I noticed something concerning. She's been working extraordinary overtime, hours far more than we're paying her for. I became curious and did some investigating." Giuseppe handed him a folder. With her permission, of course. Inside were medical bills, hospital records, pharmaceutical receipts. The amounts were staggering, the kind of debt that could crush a person for decades. Dante's eyes scanned the documents until he found the name Matteo Bianchi, age 14, diagnosis acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Her brother Giuseppe explained quietly. Their parents died 3 years ago in a car accident. Sofia has been his sole guardian since then. The treatments are experimental, not covered by standard insurance. She's been taking on extra work wherever she can find it, translating documents at night, freelance consulting on weekends. Everything goes to keeping him alive. Dante felt something crack open inside his chest, a fissure in the ice that had protected his heart for so long. Here was Sofia, carrying a burden that would have broken most people. And she'd never mentioned it, never asked for help, never used it to gain sympathy or advantage. She'd simply worked harder, fought harder, endured harder. Where's the boy being treated? Hospital of Santa Maria. But sir, get me the head of oncology on the phone now. Then contact Dr. Alessandra Romano in Switzerland. She's the best pediatric cancer specialist in Europe. I want her in Florence by Monday. Giuseppe's eyes widened. Sir, that will cost. I don't care what it costs. Dante stood, his decision made. Get it done. Sofia paused at the door, looking back at him. I know, she said quietly. That's why I'm still here. It's a confrontation Saturday morning. Sofia answered her apartment door to find Dante standing in the hallway, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, no expensive suit, no armor of wealth and power. Just a man holding a folder and wearing an expression somewhere between determination and vulnerability, Signor Moretti? What are you doing here? I know about Matteo. The words hit Sofia like a physical blow. She stepped back, one hand gripping the doorframe for support. How Giuseppe? He was trying to help. May I come in? Sofia's apartment was small, but immaculate, filled with warmth despite its modest furnishings. Photographs covered one wall, a younger Sofia with a boy who shared her brown eyes, their smiles genuine and unguarded. Medical textbooks and treatment journals were stacked on the coffee table next to a laptop covered in sticky notes. You had no right to investigate my private life, Sofia said. But there was no real anger in her voice, only exhaustion.
You're right.
I didn't.
Face.
Set the folder on the table. But I did it anyway, and I can't undo that. What I can do is this: Dr. Alessandra Romano is flying in from Zurich on Monday. She's agreed to take Matteo's case. The best pediatric oncologist in the world, Sofia. And before you refuse, before you tell me you can't accept this, I need you to listen to me. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would you do this? Dante looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he chose absolute honesty over comfort. Because when I saw Lorenzo hurting you, I wanted to kill him. Not fire him, not ruin him, kill him. I've never felt that way before. I've never cared enough about anyone to feel that way before. Dante, let me finish. He moved closer, but carefully respecting her space. I've spent my entire adult life believing that caring about people was a weakness. That love was just a pretty lie people told themselves. I surrounded myself with things and people I could control, could predict, could discard when they became inconvenient. And then you walked into my office, and you looked at me like I was just another person. Not a god, not a monster, just a man. Sofia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're my employer. This is inappropriate. I know. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't pretend that I don't think about you constantly. That I don't look for reasons to call you into my office just to hear your voice. That I didn't break land speed records driving back from Rome because something told me you needed me. He laughed bitterly. I'm 43 years old, and I'm discovering emotions I thought I was immune to. It's terrifying. I can't be another one of your conquests, Sofia said firmly, even as tears spilled down her cheeks. I won't be someone you use and discard. I've seen how you operate, Dante. I've watched the parade of women through your life. I deserve better than that. You do. The agreement came immediately, fervently. You deserve so much better than anything I know how to give. But I want to try. I want to be better. Not for show. Not for some temporary reformation that'll fade when the novelty wears off. I want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. The truth laid bare, Sofia sank onto her small couch, her hands trembling. Do you know why I took this job? When I walked into that interview, I recognized you immediately. Dante Moretti, the man who treats women like trading cards, who's been photographed with a different model or actress every month for the past decade. I told myself I was taking the job because it paid well, because it would help with Matteo's bills. But that wasn't the whole truth. Dante sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. What was the whole truth? I wanted to prove to myself that I was strong enough not to fall for someone like you. That I could see past the money and the power and the charm to the emptiness underneath. I thought I could work for you, watch you be exactly who the tabloids said you were. Feel nothing but professional detachment. She laughed, a sound caught between humor and despair. I was so wrong, Sofia. The first time you smiled, it merely smiled. Not that practice smirk you use on everyone else was 3 weeks after I started. You just closed a deal that everyone said was impossible, and when you came out of the conference room, you looked at me and smiled, like I was someone who mattered. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but I felt it like lightning. She turned to face him fully. Every day after that was harder. Watching you be cold and calculated with everyone else, but catching those tiny moments where you dropped the mask around me, the way you remembered that I take my coffee with just a little milk, how you started saying good morning instead of just grunting. The time you asked Giuseppe about my weekend, even though you pretended it was about the filing system I'd implemented. Dante's throat felt tight. I didn't think you noticed. I noticed everything. That's the problem. Sofia wiped her eyes roughly. And then Thursday happened, and you looked at me like I was something precious that had been damaged. And all my careful walls just ... crumbled. But Dante, wanting to be better and actually being better are two different things. What happens when the newness fades? When I'm no longer a mystery to solve? I don't have all the answers, Dante admitted, taking her hand carefully, ready to release it if she pulled away. She didn't. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise this will be easy. But I can promise that I've never felt this way before. That scares the hell out of me, but not as much as the thought of going back to what I was before I met you. The choice... What about Julia? Sofia asked quietly. I ended things this morning. I should have done it months ago, but I was a coward. I was comfortable in that emptiness. Dante's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. She deserves someone who can love her the way she wants to be loved. I'm not that person, and I never will be. But with you? Sofia, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a real relationship, how to be vulnerable, how to be the kind of partner you deserve. But I want to learn. My brother has to come first, Sofia said firmly. Always. His treatment, his recovery, that's my priority.
I know.
And I'm not offering to help because I want something from you. Whether you give me a chance or not, Dr. Romano will still treat Matteo. Whether you keep working for me or decide to leave, all his medical expenses are covered. That's not conditional, Sofia. That's just what should have been done from the beginning. Sofia studied his face, searching for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. She found only raw honesty and something that looked dangerously like hope. If I say yes, and I'm not saying I am everything changes. I won't be your secretary anymore. That dynamic, with you as my boss and me dependent on you for income, it's not healthy. Agreed. Giuseppe has been hinting about retirement for years. He can take your position, train his replacement. You can. Dante paused, realizing he knew very little about Sofia's dreams beyond her devotion to her brother. What do you want to do? I studied art history in university, Sofia admitted, a faint smile crossing her face. Before my parents died, I wanted to work in museum curation, maybe restoration. But when Matteo got sick, I needed stable income fast, so I took secretarial courses instead. Then do that. I know people at the Uffizi Gallery, at the Pitti Palace. Let me make some calls. No. Sofia's voice was gentle but firm. If I pursue that path, I'd do it on my own merit. No special favors, no shortcuts, because I'm with Dante Moretti. If I'm going to be with you and again, I haven't decided yet. I need to be my own person. Not an accessory, not a project, not someone whose accomplishments are dismissed as favors from a powerful boyfriend. Dante felt something warm bloom in his chest. Something that might have been pride, or might have been love, or might have been both. You're extraordinary. Practical, Sofia corrected. And skeptical. You have a history, Dante. Actions matter more than words. So here's what I propose you meant, what you said about wanting to be better. Prove it. Not to me, to yourself. Go to therapy. Address whatever made you think connection was weakness. And give me time to focus on Matteo's treatment without the pressure of defining what we are. The promise. And if I do all that, if I put in the work and wait as long as you need. Sofia leaned forward and did something that shocked them both. She kissed him. It wasn't passionate or desperate, but soft, testing, real. When she pulled back, her eyes were clear, and maybe we'll have a chance at something real. Not a fairy tale, not some dramatic romance movie, but something honest and lasting. The kind of love that grows slowly and roots deep. Dante cupped her face gently, his forehead resting against hers. I've never wanted anything more. One more thing, Sofia added, pulling back slightly. Tomorrow, I want you to come with me to visit Matteo. Not as my boss, not as some wealthy benefactor, just as ... you, the real you, whoever that is. Because if we're going to try this, he needs to meet the man, not the empire. I'd be honored. As Dante left Sofia's apartment that afternoon, he felt lighter than he had in decades. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever was. He would start therapy on Monday, the same day Dr. Romano arrived to begin Matteo's treatment. He would learn to be alone with himself, to face the demons he'd been running from since childhood. He would make mistakes, stumble, probably frustrate Sofia more than once. But for the first time in his life, Dante Moretti had something worth changing for. Not to possess, not to control, but to deserve. The beginning 3 months later, Florence welcomed spring with its usual Renaissance splendor. In a small hospital room filled with flowers and afternoon light, a teenage boy with a shy smile thanked a tall man for the latest video game console. "You really didn't have to," Dante Matteo said, though his eyes lit up with genuine joy. "I wanted to. Besides, your sister tells me you're winning all your battles. Figured you deserved some better equipment." For the virtual ones, Sofia watched from the doorway as the two most important people in her life laughed together. Dante caught her eye and smiled, that real smile that she'd come to treasure. The one that reached his eyes and made him look younger, lighter, human. The therapy was working. The old masks were cracking, replaced gradually by genuine emotion and hard-won self-awareness. He still had bad days, moments when the old Dante tried to resurface with his walls and defenses. But Sofia was patient and Dante was determined. And slowly, impossibly, they were building something neither had thought possible.
"You love him?"
Matteo observed when Dante stepped out to take a phone call. "I think I might," Sofia admitted. "He loves you too, I can tell. He looks at you the way Papa used to look at Mama, like you're his whole world." That evening, as Dante drove Sofia home through the lamplit streets of Florence, he reached for her hand. "Thank you for what?" "For seeing something in me worth saving, for being patient while I figure out how to be human, for giving me a chance when every rational part of you probably said to run." Sofia squeezed his hand. "You're worth it, Dante. The real you, not the persona you showed the world for so long. That man flawed, trying, genuinely caring, he's worth everything." As they walked to her door, Dante pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that would have been unimaginable a year ago. The chains of ice that had bound his heart for so long had finally melted, replaced by something warmer, something that felt dangerously like hope. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. The words foreign but right. "I know," Sofia replied, smiling against his chest. "I love you too." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be challenges ahead. Matteo's recovery, the scrutiny of being with someone as public as Dante, the work of maintaining a relationship between two strong-willed people. But it was real, and it was theirs. And for two people who'd spent so long believing they didn't deserve happiness, that was more than enough. Dante Moretti had been a man of ice and power, convinced that emotion was weakness and love was a lie. But Sofia Bianchi, with her quiet strength and unwavering dignity, had shown him a different truth. Love wasn't weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. And it had the power to transform even the coldest heart into something capable of warmth, vulnerability, and genuine connection. The fire had melted the ice, and from those ashes, something beautiful had begun to grow.